Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bible Talks on WBCM Radio,
Yes, welcome back.
our show for young adults diving deep into the Bible.
That's right.
And we are already on our third deep dive.
Can you believe it?
I know, it's flying by.
Time flies when you're having fun studying the Bible.
That's right, and today we are cracking open Genesis 3,
Ooh, Genesis 3.
a very infamous chapter, right?
It is. It's a big one.
Yeah, kind of where everything changes in the Bible.
Paradise lost the fall.
Yeah, all of that. But it's got some deep truths about humanity
Definitely.
and our relationship with God.
Absolutely. And, those truths, they're just as relevant today as they were back then.
For sure. Okay, so let's set the scene.
Okay.
The Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve just hanging out.
No worries in the world.
Right, until that serpent slithers in.
Oh, that serpent.
I always get tripped up, how he's described,
Yeah.
not just as a snake, but more crafty.
More crafty than all the other animals.
Yeah, that God made. Like, that's already a red flag for me.
Definitely a red flag.
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and it's fascinating how that serpent uses his craftiness.
Oh,
He doesn't just come out and say, hey, disobey God.
Right,
He's much more subtle than that.
yeah.
He starts by planting a seed of doubt
Okay,
with this seemingly innocent question.
okay.
Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?
Hold on.
Yeah.
That's like a classic manipulation tactic.
It is.
Reframing the whole situation
Totally.
to make Eve question what she knows to be true.
Exactly. And you see this all the time, even today.
Oh, yeah.
It's how misinformation spreads,
For sure.
how people get tricked into believing things that just aren't true.
It makes me think of like those deep fake videos
Oh, yeah.
where you can't even tell what's real anymore.
Exactly. It's scary how easy it is to manipulate the truth.
Yeah, so Eve's response is also really intriguing.
It is.
She tells the serpent they can't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right, the forbidden fruit.
Yeah, but then she adds, and you must not touch it or you will die. Now, God never said anything about touching it.
That's interesting.
Right.
So some scholars see this as Eve already starting to waver,
Okay.
internalizing that serpent's doubt,
Yeah.
even before taking a bite.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like temptation starts with a little shift in our thoughts and feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like a crack in our confidence.
Little ching in the armor.
Exactly. And that's when we're vulnerable.
Absolutely. And that's when the serpent really lays it on thick.
Okay.
He appeals to Eve's deepest desires.
Like what?
Knowledge, power, even a kind of godlike status.
Whoa.
He says your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
It's like he's tapping into that very human desire to be in control,
Yeah.
to have all the answers.
The ultimate power trip.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same temptation we face today, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To chase after knowledge and power.
Success.
Yeah. Thinking those things will make us happy and fulfilled.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. And he doesn't stop there.
Oh no, he keeps going.
The serpent also emphasizes the fruit's appeal to the senses.
Right.
It's good for food and pleasing to the eye.
He's really hitting all the angles.
Great.
Intellectual, spiritual, and physical.
Wow, it's like a full-on assault.
It is a total temptation overload.
Yeah, so we have this master manipulator playing on Eve's desires.
Yeah,
And sadly, she takes the bait.
she does.
But then Adam joins in too.
Mhm.
It's like this domino effect.
Yeah, one wrong choice leads to another.
What always gets me is what happens after they disobey.
Okay.
The text says their eyes were opened,
Right.
but was it really a good thing?
That's the irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
They gained knowledge,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't the kind of knowledge that brought them closer to God.
Right.
Instead, it brought shame and fear.
Okay.
They suddenly became aware of their nakedness,
Yeah.
feeling exposed and vulnerable for the first time.
That is so relatable.
It is.
I mean, who hasn't felt that way
Exactly.
after making a bad choice?
Yeah.
You just want to hide?
Yeah.
Disappear, pretend it never happened.
Curl up in a ball and disappear.
Exactly. And their relationship with God changes drastically too.
Oh, yeah.
They hear him walking in the garden
Uh-huh.
and they hide from him.
They're afraid.
Yeah, that sense of separation, of fear, of broken trust.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. And their response when God finds them,
Yeah.
not exactly a shining example of taking responsibility.
Not quite.
Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the serpent.
The blame game is strong.
Classic blame game.
Passing the buck.
But what I find interesting is that
Yeah.
even though they messed up big time,
Huh.
God doesn't just abandon them.
No.
He comes looking for them, calling out, "Where are you?"
He still cares.
He wants to connect, even in the midst of their disobedience.
Yeah, there's a real tenderness there.
Yeah, like he's saying, I still love you, even when you make bad choices.
Absolutely.
But there are still consequences.
Right.
That's where we get into the whole curse
Rule
thing,
curses.
which is always a bit tough to swallow.
Yeah, they are definitely challenging.
Yeah.
But I think they're meant to show us the ripple effects of sin.
Okay.
Each character receives a consequence
Ah.
tailored to their role in the transgression.
Okay.
So the serpent,
Yeah.
he's cursed to crawl on his belly and eat dust.
Oh,
A picture of degradation for those who deceive and manipulate others.
that's a pretty powerful image.
It is.
And what about Eve?
Yeah,
Hers seems especially harsh,
it does.
with the pain of childbirth and the struggle in her relationship with her husband.
Yes, and it's important to remember
Okay.
that these curses aren't meant to be punishments,
Okay.
but rather natural consequences of their choice.
So the pain of childbirth
Yes.
could symbolize the ongoing struggle humanity faces as a result of sin.
Exactly the way our choices have consequences that ripple out through generations.
Wow.
And the tension in the relationship between man and woman
Yeah.
reflects how sin distorts the beautiful harmony God intended for them.
So it's not like God is saying, you did something bad, so now I'm going to make you suffer.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's more like, because of your choice, these are the natural consequences you'll experience.
It's like cause and effect on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. Actions have consequences.
And it's interesting how these curses still resonate with the human experience today.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we still struggle with deception and manipulation
Lying. Yeah.
and broken relationships.
It's a constant reminder that the effects of that first sin are still being felt even thousands of years later.
Wow. But amidst all the heaviness,
Yeah,
there's a glimmer of hope, right?
there is.
Genesis 3.15, the proto-evangelium.
The first good news.
He talks about the offspring of the woman crushing the serpent's head.
Powerful imagery.
Yeah, and Christians interpret this as a prophecy pointing to Jesus,
Right.
who will ultimately defeat evil.
Even at the cost of his own suffering.
Wow, that's a powerful image of hope and redemption.
It is.
A promise that even in the midst of brokenness, God hasn't abandoned us.
He has a plan to restore what was lost.
That's so encouraging.
It is.
Even though things took a dark turn in the garden, there's still a path back to God.
Absolutely a path to healing and wholeness.
But before we get into that, let's talk about what happens after the curses are pronounced.
Okay.
God does something incredibly compassionate,
He does.
even though he also expels Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden.
Yes. It's a moment that beautifully blends justice and mercy.
Okay.
He clothes them with garments of skin,
Okay.
symbolizing his care and protection,
Uh-huh.
even as he sends them out into a world
Yeah.
that will be far more difficult than the paradise they once knew.
Right.
It's a complex picture of both the consequences of their choices
Yeah.
and the unwavering love of their creator.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have
The serpent's craftiness,
our temptation
the fall, the curses.
and that glimmer of hope in the proto-evangelium.
But there's still one more detail that always jumps out at me.
Okay, what's that?
Adam finally names his wife after the fall,
Huh, interesting.
calling her Eve, which means life.
Life.
Yeah. Why do you think he does that at this specific moment?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the heart of the story.
Okay.
Some scholars see it as Adam finally taking ownership, acknowledging Eve as his partner, even in the face of consequences.
Yeah.
And the name itself, Eve,
Yeah.
emphasizes that even though they've been expelled from Eden,
Right.
life goes on.
Okay.
They've lost paradise,
Uh-huh.
but they haven't lost everything.
Right.
There's still hope, still the potential for new life, new beginnings.
Wow.
And it's Eve, as the mother of all living,
Yeah.
who will carry that potential forward.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
It's like even in the midst of tragedy,
Yeah,
there's a resilient hopefulness that shines through.
absolutely.
Life goes on, and even though things might never be the same,
Right.
there's still beauty and possibility to be found.
Exactly. And I think that's a message that resonates with us today.
For sure.
We might make mistakes.
Yeah.
We might experience loss and hardship.
Mm-hmm.
But even in those dark moments,
Yeah.
God's grace is still with us, and there's always a reason to hope.
I love that.
That me too.
That's a great place to kind of pause and reflect.
Yes.
Take a moment.
Let that sink in.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Sounds good.
Radio WBCM. Radio WBCM.
Yeah, it's like that line from Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun.
Oh, yeah.
The same struggles, the same temptations, they just keep playing out in different forms throughout history.
You know, it just hit me that we keep talking about the serpent tempting Eve
Yeah.
to be like, God, but what does that even mean?
Right.
Was God holding back on them? Like, what was he so afraid of them knowing?
That's a question that's been debated for centuries.
Oh, I bet.
Some scholars believe it's about grasping at forbidden knowledge,
Oh.
wanting to define good and evil for themselves
Mhm.
instead of trusting God's definition.
Right.
Others think it's more about a desire for power and control,
Okay.
trying to be autonomous from God.
Like playing God.
Yeah, that old saying.
And isn't it interesting how God gave Adam and Eve free will in the first place?
It is.
You know, he knew they could choose disobedience,
Right.
but he still gave them that choice.
That's the paradox of free will, isn't it?
Yeah.
True love requires the freedom to choose,
Yeah.
even if the choice might lead to pain and separation.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, would love even be meaningful without that element of choice? You know, if we were just programmed to obey,
Yeah.
would it really be love?
Whoa, deep thoughts.
I know, right?
But it makes sense. You know, if they were just robots,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be any real relationship, no genuine trust.
Exactly.
And that makes their disobedience even more tragic
It does.
because they had everything.
They did.
They had a perfect relationship with God.
A beautiful world.
Yeah. And they still chose to go their own way.
It really highlights the nature of sin, doesn't it?
Yeah. How so?
It's not just about breaking a set of rules.
Okay.
It's about choosing our own will over God's will, putting ourselves at the center of the universe instead of Him.
And those choices have consequences,
They do.
not just for us, but for the world around us.
It's like that domino effect we talked about earlier.
right.
One choice leads to another,
Uh-huh.
and suddenly we're in a world filled with brokenness, pain, and suffering.
It's easy to look around and feel hopeless sometimes.
It is, but here's the good news.
Okay.
Even though the fall had devastating consequences,
Yeah.
it's not the end of the story.
Okay, what happens next?
We already touched on the proto-evangelium,
Right.
that promise of a future redeemer.
Uh-huh.
But even beyond that, God then abandoned Adam and Eve.
Right.
He provides for them,
How?
giving them clothes to cover their shame.
Oh, okay.
And he sets in motion a plan for their ultimate redemption.
So even in judgment, there's mercy.
Absolutely.
He's not just throwing them away. He's giving them a chance to start over, to move forward.
And that's a theme that runs throughout the entire Bible, isn't it?
Yeah, what is it?
God's constant pursuit of humanity. His unwavering love, even when we mess up.
It's pretty amazing
It is.
when you think about it.
He's always offering us a way back to him.
But what about all that stuff about, like, earning our salvation?
Right. Well, it's not about earning our way back through good deeds
Oh.
or religious ritual.
Why?
It's about accepting the free gift of grace that he offers through his son, Jesus.
So it's like that reset button you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
No matter how badly we mess up, we can always hit that button and start fresh with God.
It's first start.
Yeah, he's not keeping score. He just wants to be in a relationship with us.
That's the beauty of it. And, you know, as we've been unpacking all this,
Yeah.
it's really striking how relevant this ancient story is to our lives today.
I agree. It's not just some dusty old myth.
No, not at all.
It speaks to the struggles we all face, the temptations we encounter every day.
Think about the serpent's tactics.
Okay.
They're still alive and well.
Yeah, for sure.
We're bombarded with messages that try to make us doubt God, question his goodness, and tempt us to go our own way.
It's like we're living in a spiritual battleground,
Yeah, we are.
constantly having to be on guard against lies and deception.
Gotta stay vigilant.
And like that whole pressure to present a perfect image on social media.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're all trying to hide our nakedness.
Our flaws and insecurities.
Yeah, just like Adam and Eve hiding in the garden.
That's a brilliant connection.
Right.
And just like Adam and Eve were tempted to be like God in their own way,
Uh-huh.
we face similar temptations today.
Like what?
We chase after knowledge, power, success,
Yeah.
thinking those things will bring us fulfillment,
Right.
but ultimately they often leave us empty,
Yeah.
still yearning for something more.
It's like we keep reaching for the wrong fruit,
Yeah.
thinking it will satisfy us,
Mm-hmm.
but it just leaves us with a stomachache.
But here's the thing. True fulfillment doesn't come from chasing after those things.
Okay, then where does it come from?
It comes from surrendering our lives to God, finding our identity in him,
Okay.
and embracing his purpose for our lives.
So it's about realizing that True happiness isn't about getting everything we want,
No.
but about aligning our desires with God's desires.
Yeah, exactly.
Trusting that he knows what's best for us.
And just like God provided garments of skin for Adam and Eve to cover their shame,
Yeah.
he offers us a garment of righteousness through faith in Jesus.
That's a beautiful image.
It is.
Our tattered rags of sin for the spotless robe of Christ's righteousness.
It's a beautiful exchange, isn't it?
And it's not just about us as individuals.
No, it's bigger than that.
Right.
It's about the restoration of all things.
Wow.
Healing broken relationships, reconciling humanity with God, and renewing creation itself.
So are you saying that even though the fall happened,
Yeah.
God's plan wasn't derailed?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that theologians have wrestled with for centuries.
I can imagine.
But I think there's a sense in which God can take even our brokenness, our mistakes,
Yeah.
and weave them into his grand tapestry of redemption.
Wow. That's mind-blowing.
It is.
It's like he's taking the broken pieces of our lives and creating a mosaic that's even more beautiful than the original.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real hope lies.
Okay.
It's not about pretending that the fall never happened
Right.
or trying to earn our way back to paradise. It's about embracing the reality of our brokenness while also clinging to the promise of God's redemptive power.
So even though things might be messy and complicated now,
Yeah,
there's a bigger story unfolding.
absolutely.
And God is using everything, even our failures, to ultimately run about his good purposes.
That's right. And that's what gives us the strength to keep going,
Yeah.
to keep choosing love and forgiveness, even when it's hard.
It's not always easy.
No,
Right.
it's not. But we know that we're not just stumbling around in the dark.
Right.
We're walking towards the light, towards a future where everything will be made new.
That's a beautiful thought. All of this has given me so much to think about.
Me too.
I'm starting to see Genesis 3 in a whole new light.
That's great to hear.
It's not just a story about a forbidden fruit and a talking snake.
No,
It's a story about us,
it is.
about the choices we make, and about the God who loves us even when we choose wrong.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's a story that's still being written.
What do you mean?
Every day we have the opportunity to choose love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, and hope over despair.
Wow.
And as we make those choices, we become part of God's ongoing story of redemption,
And that's what it's all about.
bringing his kingdom a little closer to earth.
Yeah, it's like we're all part of this grand cosmic adventure, but we sometimes forget we're not the main characters. We're supporting actors in God's much bigger story.
That's a fantastic analogy. And speaking of supporting roles, remember those garments of skin
Oh, yeah.
God provided for Adam and Eve?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more to unpack there than just clothes.
Okay.
It's like this tangible symbol of God's grace,
Yeah.
Covering their shame and nakedness.
I never thought of it that way. It's not just about physical clothing.
No.
It's about God shielding them from the full weight of their actions, offering them a kind of protection even as they face the consequences.
Exactly. It's this beautiful foreshadowing of the ultimate covering we receive through Jesus. His sacrifice on the cross becomes the perfect garment for our sins,
Yeah.
making us acceptable in God's eyes.
Okay, so it's like trading in our guilt-stained clothes for this brand new outfit of grace.
Yeah, it's a total makeover inside and out.
You got it. And that's the core of the gospel message.
Okay.
It's not about striving to be good enough
Right.
or racking up brownie points with God.
Yeah.
It's about accepting the free gift of grace that he offers through Jesus.
Okay.
We can't earn it. We simply receive it.
It's like realizing you've been trying to climb this mountain of perfection your whole life, and then suddenly there's this bridge that just appears, taking you straight to the top. All you have to do is walk across. It's that moment of surrender, letting go of our own efforts and trusting in what Jesus has already done for us. And that grace empowers us to live differently,
Okay.
to walk in obedience and love the way God intended for us all along.
So it's not just about getting a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's
Yeah.
about this whole transformation, becoming more like Jesus.
Right, absolutely. And, as we wrap up our deep dive into Genesis 3,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how this story, as old as it is, still has the power to challenge and encourage us today.
Me too. I mean, we started with this image of paradise lost,
Yeah.
but it feels like we've discovered a whole new perspective on hope and redemption.
It's like realizing that the story doesn't end with expulsion from the garden.
Right.
It's just the beginning of a much bigger adventure, a journey of restoration and renewal, and each of us has a role to play in that story.
So what can we do? How can we apply these lessons from Genesis 3 to our lives today?
Well, I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Recognize the tactics the serpent uses, the subtle ways he tries to deceive us and lead us astray. We need to be vigilant,
Oh.
discerning the truth from the lies and standing firm in our faith.
It's like putting on that spiritual armor, like it says in Ephesians, the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of salvation. We need to be ready for battle.
Exactly. And remember that God has already won the victory through Jesus. We don't have to fight alone.
That's good.
We can lean on his strength, his wisdom, and his grace to navigate the challenges we face.
And I think it's also about remembering that we're not just individuals striving for our own salvation.
Right.
We're part of a community, a body of believers who are called to support and encourage each other on this journey.
Yes, we need each other. We need to share our struggles, celebrate our victories, and offer forgiveness and grace just as freely as we receive it from God.
It's like we're all in this boat together, navigating the rough waters of life, and we need to work together to keep it afloat.
Beautifully said. So as you go about your week, I encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed today. Think about how the themes of temptation, sin, and redemption play out in your own life. And remember that no matter how far you may have strayed, God's love and grace are always available to you. Just reach out and receive them.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us today on Bible Talks on WBCM Radio.
It's been a pleasure.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our show so you don't miss any future episodes.
Yes, please do.
And if you want even more content, you can always find us on YouTube at www.youtube.com/Radio WBCM.
We've got tons of videos and other resources there.
So you can keep growing in your faith. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.